Welcome to Pucked Up Hockey Moms, the landing space for moms of all ages, shapes, and sizes. And we won't hate it if the non-mom joins either. We just hope your ears are as unfiltered as our mouths, and you're as passionate about hockey as we are. It's time to get offside, ladies, and no whistles are being blown here. I'm your host, Amanda.
And I'm Brittany.
And this week, we are lucky to have with us Scout with 30 years of experience in the hockey world, currently with women's hockey, and now launching a recruiting course for families through AAA hockey recruiting. Welcome, Steve.
Hey, thanks for having me here, ladies.
Why does helping families navigating the recruiting world matter now more than ever?
Well, I mean, mostly it's because there's so many rules, there's so much bad information out there, and the landscape's changing just constantly. It's even tough to keep up with it as an insider.
Yeah, I can imagine.
How did you first get started in scouting and recruiting for women's hockey?
Well, that's kind of a long story. Girls both started playing hockey when they were really young, and I always volunteered when they were playing hockey. I was a junior hockey goalie, but way back in the 80s. Never would have made it to the show or anything like that. But so I started off on the girls' teams as goalie coach, and then as the years went on, and my older daughter really got serious about playing hockey. Then I went in as an assistant coach. I was a head coach. I was the trainer. I was a team manager. Ended up getting stuck not on purpose, on the board of directors for a hockey association, and then lo and behold, ended up being the Minor Hockey Association president. That one was interesting.
Yep.
and as my daughter went into university hockey and whatnot, I started scouting. And when it got to the end of her college career, then I was thinking, geez, I don't want to leave the game completely. And then I ended up, getting in touch with some people and moving into the scouting world and whatnot. And I think, in minor hockey, probably the only roles I never really had was as an ice scheduler or as a treasurer. And those are challenging positions that I didn't really want those ones. So, hey, thank your volunteers.
Yeah, no, totally.
Sure.
We can't do anything without volunteers. I myself have done a lot of different roles. I've been on the executive and stuff, like safety. I've done treasurer.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. I don't love it. Like, I've done it for a team, not the whole association, thankfully. But yeah, like, I get what you mean when your kids are kind of coming to the end of something. Well, my kids are not quite at the end of anything, but like, hockey's kind of an identity. Like, being a hockey parent is your identity. Yeah. I was talking this with someone recently, and you're kind of like, well, what would I do once my kids are out of it? And for me, it's starting a podcast, clearly. Just staying involved in it, because I love the world so much, so I can understand wanting to be in that.
And what? For ladies that are listening to this, we can't on the women's side get enough non-parent coaches. So you dare to put your hat in the ring for that. Anyone in their right mind would be giving you a big thumbs up.
I mean, I tried it for my daughter's first year assisting, and then all of the kids that were 4 are much better skaters than I am. And I felt at 6 feet tall, I was a hindrance to, or a safety. I was a danger to society.
Hazard.
Yeah, I was a hazard. I was more of a pylon than anything. So as much as I love it, I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I could do it, because I just cannot skate. And I feel like I would injure myself, and somebody has to pay my mortgage other than just my husband if I broke a neck or something. It's not a good idea. But I do love being involved in any other capacity, right? So maybe I'll turn into a scout. Who knows? Over your 30-year career, what has been the biggest changes you've seen, or what have been the biggest changes you've seen in the women's game and recruiting landscape?
Well, for starters, just to clear it up and everything, I've been in women's hockey for 30 years. I've actually been a scout. And I've scouted for Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia, for those 8 years. And in 6 of those years, we've actually won the ACHA National Championship. So I'm pretty proud of that. And then on the men's side, I've been scouting in the USPHL and the NCDC. But you know what? I really my passion, I think, is really on the girls' side, and I guess it's probably because I was in girls' hockey all the way up. But, our university is so geographically far from all the major hockey hubs like Boston, Detroit, Toronto, all those, that I do most of the in-person recruiting because it's just not viable for the coaches of the teams to actually make it up here. Like we're talking 12-hour drives at least for anywhere that they go. And to do that during hockey season on a weekend is almost an impossibility. So I live right at the Canada-U.S. border. There's two crossings within about 20 minutes of me on either side. And that makes it pretty nice. Like I've got the Thousand Islands crossing and the Johnstown Bridge. And basically like from my back window, I'm looking at New York State. So it makes it pretty convenient and whatnot to get to all those places. I can be in Toronto in 4 hours. I can be in Boston or Detroit in 7 hours. So that part's kind of nice. And, ultimately the kids that we recruited like 8 years ago, they probably wouldn't even make our team now. Like that's how much the game has changed and how serious it's gotten. With the cost of hockey, we also see how intense parents are and how cutthroating the recruiting world is. Some of the things that we see and hear at the rinks are just wild. And the boys' game has escalated skill-wise, of course, as well. Just maybe not at the same pace.
Yeah, it's definitely changed. I mean, I will say today, like when we're recording this, PWHL announced Seattle today. I have to throw that out there. And Vancouver was last week. So I'm just so excited that for the girls scheme that there's like 2 West Coast teams now in the professional league. So I had to throw that out there. But that's a lot has changed in that climate.
What do scouts really look for in a player beyond just skills?
Well, that's a good one, and it really depends on the situation. One thing is situational need. Like, for instance, if we have a plethora of forwards that have came to us with recruiting questionnaires or whatever, and our big need right now is for a strong stud D that can run the power play, then we're going to focus on that, right? There might be a lot of forwards trying to catch our attention, but if that's what the need is, then that's the important thing at the moment. Coaches and scouts are always looking at their families too. And what I mean by that is, especially at the junior level and also the college levels, if you're an over-involved parent and one that constantly offers coaching advice, feels the need to sell your kid hard to the scout that's standing next to you, or is banging on the glass or swearing at the refs, just stop. Like your kids going anywhere. We notice that stuff. We're looking for that kind of stuff. And that's not to mention the possibility of having your kids get really frustrated with your actions and wanting to spend their time doing something else, maybe even quitting hockey. Well, hopefully not, but that can happen, right? And lastly, I'll mention adaptability. Phone, Zoom, or in-person interviews that we do with a lot of our recruits, that'll expose your maturity level or that lack thereof. Teams look for mature kids who can handle the grind of a long season, the wrath of maybe an overly upset coach, good time management, being able to do their own laundry, maybe even cook a meal, staying out of trouble and keeping up with their studies. And we can usually tell in about 10 minutes of an interview if kid's ready or not.
Oh, wow. That's a short time frame.
Yeah. And what's funny is that we're taping this tonight. And when I get off with you ladies, in about 45 minutes, we actually have a recruit call with a girl from BC.
Oh, nice. How important are academics, work ethic, and character compared to raw talent?
Okay, well, I guess I'm going to go off on a bit of a rant here because this is a big...
I love it. I love rants.
Character and academics, those are super important. Character, of course, at the junior level, because at the younger ages, these kids are impressionable, and one bad apple can derail the season for an entire team. It's not uncommon for there to be a 4 or 5 year age gap from, the youngest kid to the oldest kid on a team when you're talking about junior levels and whatnot. Some of those conversations in a dressing room might not be appropriate for the kid who's 15 years old compared to the kids that are 18 or 19 years old, right?
Yeah.
So and at the college level, of course, schools invest tens of thousands of dollars in each player, and not only does it make a coach and a scouting staff's job more difficult when someone decommits, it also makes the program look bad when you have to decommit from a player who's just not worth the headache. Yeah, scouts and coaches, they spend a ton of money on recruiting. Like our recruiting budget is probably getting a lot more than you might think when you consider what goes into it. Most players and parents don't realize that a lot of these college coaches have to fly in for showcases because of their distance and how quick they need to be in and out. So there's transportation, like flights and car rentals. There's hotels, meals. Of course, we all go there in branded apparel so that everybody knows what school we're from. And an incredible amount of time is involved with every recruit. When I plan to go to a showcase, I get the schedule about 2 weeks in advance from the organizer, and I probably spend a good 8 hours just planning my weekend. What rinks I'll go to, what games I'll go to, at what times that I need to attend. When there's over 60 teams on an 8 ice, maybe two addresses with a total of 8 ice pads in that, and they're more than 20 minutes from one another. And the main one I'm thinking of when I'm talking about this is Stony Creek. It's almost impossible to try and catch every team at least one game. Sometimes, you might only catch a period or two of one team. And depending on how many recruiting questionnaires came in, you might need to be in a lot of places real fast. Sometimes I'll literally plan that I'm going from this rink to this rink and I'm stopping at A&W at this location because it's right off the highway, and then I can eat for the next 10 while I get to the next rink. That's a lot, right? And you want to focus mostly on the kids that have already shown interest, but you also want to make some other notes, because you never know, and it happens every year, where a kid or two will reach out a month after the showcase and hopefully you've got some notes on them, because they're going to be like, hey, I saw you at Stony and we were there and I was wearing da da da. Did you see me? Was I good? It's like that, and not to mention, if there's an injury or delay, a conversation with a player or a parent that are kind of impromptu and whatnot, that can derail my best set plan, right? Like I've missed entire games that I wanted to see simply because I got in a great conversation with a parent who really wanted to know a lot about our school or the team that I was there scouting for, and so it never goes exactly as planned. Campus visits aren't cheap for the schools either, of course. When you go like we do, we sometimes will fly kids down. We'll sometimes cover hotels and whatnot. And, those things don't come cheap, right? And if you don't invest in your prospects and that you want, someone else is gonna. Yeah. So that's the whole character rant. As for academics, hey, let's face it, the number of players who are going to play in the Olympics or go pro is a pretty small percentage. And the number that go on and play junior or college, it's far greater, but it's still a pretty small percentage. Hockey should be the means to the goal, not the goal itself. It's really frustrating to invest into the potential of a recruit and only to find out that he or she can't even make it past the admissions process, and therefore they've disqualified themselves because of their marks, right?
Absolutely.
And then the last one that you mentioned was work ethic. And well, honestly, that one's a given. If a student athlete doesn't have a solid work ethic, they aren't going anywhere. Pure skill is great, but over time, you won't fool a coach or a scout. Teams that take a flyer on kids with poor habits, 99% of the time regret it. And we see it all the time, because that's the kid that goes and puts themselves in the NCAA portal because, hey, I was a superstar and now I'm on the fourth line at this school, and I'm not going to put up with that. I'm way too good for that. And well, there's a reason.
Yeah. Yep. Nope. I could see that.
Yep, for sure. What advice do you have for players who aren't the superstars, but still want to play college hockey?
Well, you know what? That's a really good question. And all I could say to that is stand out at something. If you've put in some interest and I'm there watching you and you're not the greatest shooter and you're not the greatest stick handler in that, stand out at something. Show me something that's going to tell me that you want it, right? I've seen kids get signed at schools and in junior teams, and I was just blown away because it didn't seem like they had what it takes to play at that level. And then, there's a number of ways that we get notified when a kid's committed. And I'll sometimes just take a peek and rewatch one of these kids who seems to be in a bit of an anomaly. And sure enough, something stands out. They're the best shot blocker on their team. They'll lay out for anything. They have no fear. Maybe they're the absolute best teammate. They're picking up the warm-up pucks. They're leading the warm-up cheers. They're pumping everyone up on the bench. They're super positive. They might not be the most talented, but show us what your identity is, and maybe there'll be a spot for you somewhere.
Yeah.
That's great advice.
I love it. How early should players and families realistically start thinking about recruitment?
Well, I'd say probably grade 9. We sometimes even have kids younger than that reaching out to us. And really, when you're just moving into being a teenager, so much can change. And for a school or a junior team, you don't want to put too much emphasis on a kid that's that young. They could end up quitting hockey 3 years before you're ever going to be able to recruit them in that. So we just don't put a whole lot of time and effort into that. But by grade 9, uh, you know, still no college team is going to be able to sign you at that age, but it's about practice and habits. Just like a game of hockey, prospects need to get used to the off ice stuff. Coming to the rink with the right mindset that someone could be watching you at any time, dressing appropriately, being on time, being courteous, being aware of your surroundings. These are intangibles as well that learning the art of communication in these days of social media, it's sometimes really difficult to talk to these one word answers, right?
Yeah. Eye
So,
contact.
oh,
Or
yeah,
words that don't mean anything nowadays that they've just made up.
Yeah.
absolutely. So, parents, teaching your kid the art of communication is going to serve them well for the following 2 to 3 years. When they have those habits, and they're going to be scrutinized. At 14, some kids are off to private schools or junior teams are getting billeted, and that's a whole other topic for another.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure we'll touch on that one at some point.
Yeah.
Come back for a part 2 or something.
Yeah.
What are some of the key differences between scouting for women's hockey versus men?
Well, I'd say probably ages, leagues, and numbers. And what I mean by that is that, many boys will leave home earlier for hockey opportunities, and therefore they'll have a different mindset. Boys have the small but potential opportunity to become multimillionaires playing a sport. So it's a different level of compete. And how I mentioned earlier about cutthroat, amp that up about 10 times from the girls' game. The second is leagues, because on the girls' side, you've got European leagues that have their completely different set of rules than what we have over here. But focusing on North America, on the girls' side, you've got prep academies, you've got U15, U18, and U22. On the US side, there's also academies, but then it's kind of a U14, U16, U19 scenario, which, there's really very little difference there. It's just the way that Hockey Canada and Hockey USA has decided to do that. But in Canada, of course, AA teams are the equivalent of USA AAA teams, and prep schools and academies, they slot themselves to be allowed to compete in these brackets by not having overage players that would push them up another age category. And so therefore girls is a lot easier to manage because there's really, there's only those certain age categories and whatnot, where on the boys side, there's so many AAA categories, schools, USPHL, NCDC, BCHL, EOGHL. There's more. There's
So
more
many letters. I get so confused. Oh my
goodness. The alphabet hockey. Okay. But there's so much. There's so much.
I knew my alphabet, but I just don't. Apparently, I don't.
Just say, the biggest challenge for the boys' side, of course, is when you've got that many leagues, is trying to compare them to their peers. It's a whole lot easier when you're at a girls' U19, U22 tournament, and all the best are playing the best. It's not necessarily that way on the boys' side because there's so many elite leagues, and then if you're trying to compare two kids, but they don't even play in the same league, and that can make it a little bit more of a challenge. And where you really notice that is on the girls' side. Quite often it's just the coach and maybe an assistant coach or a scout that handle most of that recruiting. But on the boys' side, it's not unheard of to have a team of 6 scouts or more for just one school or one hockey team.
Wow.
Schools and junior teams want to make sure they leave no stone unturned to ensure that they're successful. In elite minor hockey, some coaches are even getting paid, and their livelihood depends on the success of their recruiting. And ultimately, it's a results-oriented business. There's even on the girls' side, there's quite a number of coaches that will receive some sort of a stipend, but then also run skills coaching on ice or something like that to kind of backfill their incomes and such. So even for some of the elite girls coaches and whatnot, hockey is their livelihood.
Yeah. Are there different priorities or qualities you look for when scouting female athletes?
Yeah, there is. Girls don't play full contact at any level. And so the game is completely different. On the girls' side, speed is so important. Often I'll speak with kids, and when they think that they're ready to play our level, my go-to comment is, "Hey, when you think you're fast enough to play college hockey, you better get faster."
Yeah.
And we look for great skaters. We look for girls with high hockey IQ, because girls are very literal. If you tell them to do a drill a certain way, they're going to do it exactly that way.
Oh yeah.
On the boys' side, they tend to have a little more creativity. So if girls have that creativity and that high hockey IQ, that's a big thing. And of course, girls that can really fire a puck. Shooting mechanics and core strength are so lacking so much in the girls' game.
How does the recruiting timeline differ for female players compared to male players?
Well, not really very much. I mean, there's a lot of different leagues again, and a lot of different rules. But at the end of the day, it's not a lot. There are rules in place for youth sports, NCAA and ACHA. That also the ACHA follows NCAA rules, but a bit more loosely. Junior leagues have age restrictions, and we could go on about that forever. I would just recommend that wherever you want to play, make sure your student athlete does their research and makes sure that they know what the recruiting timelines are. I would say NCAA is probably the most complex. They with their rules about when you can do visits, when there are dead times, when communications are allowed, and that it can all be found online. That's all stuff that you can find for yourself with a little bit of research.
I totally lost where I was. That one?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry. See? There. Is there a difference in the level of family involvement you see on the girls' side versus boys' side?
Yeah, I'd say boys is a lot more intense, and that says something. As the saying goes, every hockey parent thinks their kid's going to play in the NHL, and it's scary how that possibility is almost expected by some parents. I like to compare the analogy of winning the lottery as my retirement plan, and most of it's not going to happen, right? So many parents feel that that the winning formula is about time and money, paying for those expensive hockey advisors, extra training, mental training, skills sessions, additional showcases, dry land stuff. Sometimes it's just too much. As a parent, you got to ask yourself these questions. Is this what my kid really wants, or is this what I want them to do? Am I going to regret not letting them be a kid, not letting them ever go to a sleepover or birthday party, play another sport, just so that they don't miss out on that additional ice time or something like that? And this is where I plug in my recruiting course, AAA hockey recruiting. It's a 90-minute masterclass for an investment of less than you'd spend on tape in a season. We're going to give you so much insight into everything we're talking about today.
I love it. I know when we first started talking, we'd been talking for a little while, and I was like, why is there not a class? And you're like, well, actually. So I was like, that's perfect, because really there's just so much to know and not enough information out there, right? So I love that you've created this, because really there's just, people need to know, and people don't share it because you're kind of like holding it on as that elusive golden nugget that you want for yourself, because you're afraid that if you share it, that's taking your child's golden ticket into the NHL. I personally just want my kid to get into a good college, and his career in school, like an actual profession, is my retirement fund. That's what I tell him.
Totally off the cuff for a minute, it's so true what you just said. And it's kind of funny because, when you're going to one of these big showcases, there's only so many big hotels in a city, right? So quite when I'm checking in, I'll be like, hey, by the way, what teams are staying here? And kind of get a feel in case there's somebody who we are actually actively recruiting that's staying at the hotel, because there's lots of other little tidbits and whatnot that you go through when that's happening. And so of course the hours are crazy that we're at the rink, and by the time I get back to the hotel, there's usually some hallway parties going on, with the the rooms open and all the parents are in one room, and there's some partaking of beverages and such. The things that you hear when you're walking by, you just shake your head and you're like,
oh my God,
I can only imagine.
That is so not true, and you're throwing all these people off, and they're just hanging on your every word.
They are. They're listening like, oh my God, they know everything. I must. And yeah, like part of you is cringing on the inside. Yeah, I can only imagine. But It's true. I wish there was more information sharing, and that is a lot of the reason why I started this. One, I think a lot of moms have great stories. I want to share that, but at the same time, for new parents and parents that have been in this in a while, I just think it's a great platform to be able to share information because we can, so we should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some myths or misunderstandings families have about the recruiting process?
Oh, it's a perfect spot for that one.
And of course, the biggest one, and I'm sure you've heard it before, is that if you're a really good hockey player, they're going to find you.
I hear that all the time, and I look at people like, really? Do you know how many kids are out there?
Yeah.
And so let's kind of dig into that for a second, right?
Yeah.
There's a difference between they'll find you and they'll notice you,
Yeah.
right? They might be able to notice that you're a fantastic hockey player, but consider this, right? In a real world scenario. So NCAA D1 coach or top end junior coach is watching a game because a prospect filled out a recruiting form or showed interest through email or whatever, and they want to go and play for that coach. Coach really likes that player, plans to speak with him after the game, is pretty excited about all that. Notices a fantastic player on the other team, but that's not someone who's shown any interest. So why would the coach take a shot in the dark and walk away from the player that they are happy with and that they know is really interested, and go and try and chase after a player that hasn't reached out, might already be committed and just hasn't published it yet, doesn't have the grades to play, or the school doesn't have their preferred major. So when he or she has a much better opportunity to sign a great kid who he or she knows they want to go and play for them, then why would you even do that, right? I found myself in that position numerous times, and it looks terrible on a coach to be scurrying around at a showcase trying to talk to too many kids. For parents, I take this, I guess, a bit lightly, but be wary of the coach that goes and talks to 3 or 4 kids on the same team after a game. Maybe it's legit, but there's a good chance they're just playing the numbers and hoping that maybe they'll cast a big net and hook a couple of winners, right? So you got to be careful of that. Their program could be a little more desperate than others. Maybe it's a brand new program, and maybe that's why they're really want to be able to fill the bench. So that may not always be the case, but there's rules and regulations that you got to be aware of, and that's another misunderstanding, that you can communicate and visit a school anytime. That's just not correct, right? There's some pretty stringent NCAA and U Sports rules that don't allow coaches to contact you at younger ages or during certain times of the year.
Parents are allowed to reach out though, right? You can't contact the student, but if people contact you, that's a different story.
Well, there's a lot of unwritten rules, and I probably shouldn't speak too much about those because it might upset some of my peers.
No, fair enough. I'm just curious.
But there is a lot of NCAA rules that must be stringently followed.
Okay, got it. What's a mistake you often see families make that could hurt a player's chances?
Definitely be parent over-involvement. At the junior level and even more dominantly at the college level, student athletes are maturing, and the coach want the young person to be almost solely involved in the process. Parents are there to write checks and be part of the process, but they need to back away and let the coach and the athlete be the stars of the show. And what I mean by that is, the coach wants to have a relationship with the athlete. They need to make sure that young person is going to be good in the room, not be a headache, not be someone whose emotions are out of check all the time, and just trust your parenting and the habits you instilled in your athlete, and let them go, mom and dad.
Kind of like having your mom come to a job interview. You should probably
kind of like it.
Because I know that happens, so I feel like that's kind of a similar. Have you not ever heard of that? Oh, yeah, no, I know that in certain industries that we may or may not work in, moms have shown up to interviews or called managers and asked why their child got that certain review. And when I hear about it, I shake my head because I can't believe that's a thing. And it's similar, I can imagine, to a parent directly following up with a coach at a college or a university rule, right? The student should be able to talk to the coach directly, and whether whether you're talking to your child and saying, hey, you should ask the coach this, if they're worried about it, like that's probably a better strategy than going to the coach at a university for your kid.
And you know what? You know what parents are going to be those ones, unfortunately, when the kids are at a much younger age, because they're usually the ones that'll pull a coach aside and say, why did you cut my kid?
Yeah. Yeah. The tryout process is hard and scary as it is. But yeah, sitting on your hands is hard. But you just...
in there.
You got to do it. You got to do it.
Is there such a thing as being too aggressive or too passive when trying to get noticed?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every year we hear from a number of kids who will communicate with us either through email or through our recruiting questionnaire. We use a company called Front Rush, and so when kids can literally go on our hockey website and whatnot and fill everything out, and it goes into my phone within about 30 seconds. So you can spot kids a mile away that are sending the same communication to everyone, right? Hockey recruiting spam, if you will.
Yeah.
At a showcase, you'll see an unusual number of coaches will show up at the same game at the same time, and they kind of get restless after a couple minutes, and eventually one of them will comment, hey, is everyone here to see so and so? And the coaches will all laugh, and then they'll leave and scatter in different directions to go to another rink, because some kid reached out to 20 coaches and said, hey, I'll be playing on this ice surface at this time, and everybody showed up to see them. And yeah, so it's not a great look. I'm shocked by how many kids will complete a questionnaire and get partway through the recruiting process and then ghost a coach because they think they have something better coming. And then suddenly they'll reach back in March or April as if nothing happened. And by then the coach has already filled the spot. It's sad, but that's often the story. When you see a kid who's playing post-grad, sometimes it'll be a kid who's, just trying to get better marks and whatnot and qualify for certain academic scholarships. But sometimes it's just because they kind of got duped. They were a plan B, and it never came to pass. And then it was kind of like a game of musical chairs, and the chairs ran out. So the moral of the story is, if a team or school has you on the radar, for the better part of a year, and you make it known that you're ready to commit, but they don't commit, you might think that they have another option, and you might want to make sure you do too.
Mm-hmm. What inspired you to create your new recruiting seminar course for families?
Well, mostly my communications with parents. I mean, it's somewhat of a misconception that speaking with coaches and scouts is taboo. I mean, I'm talkative and I'm a people person. I love talking to people when I'm at showcases, and that not all coaches and scouts are very talkative, and or they might need to focus on a certain game, on a certain player or whatever. But a lot of them will be happy to talk to you. Just pick your spots and don't bother everyone, I'd say. But I've found that it's great talking to people at the rinks. We've landed some of our best players that way. Great story. I'm watching a game and there's a kid in a team jacket, dressed all nice and whatnot, and she's manning the video camera so that they can have the whole game on video, I guess, to do video afterwards. And she's obviously a player on the team. So I asked her why she's not playing, and she says, I blew out my knee. I'm not going to be able to play until like January. And I said, hey, I'm looking for a forward, and da-da-da-da-da. And she's like, oh, watch number 9. She hasn't committed. And I think she was even looking at your school. And so, I watched her for a couple minutes, and bingo, we signed her 2 months later, and she was actually the rookie of the year this year on our team. So that's just one experience of many. But, parents would come to me and ask so many questions about recruiting, being seen, communications. There's such a knowledge gap out there, just like you guys were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And when, you type in AI or you listen to everyone's opinions or go in just on social media groups, well, as a scout, sometimes you'll just laugh at what you hear. I'm honored every year when minor hockey coaches will reach out to me and ask if I wouldn't mind, at the end of the day, going to a hotel meeting room and speaking to all their players and parents, doing a recruiting presentation for the team. That type of request showed me that there is a need for this course, and gives players and parents some of the fundamentals to put together a winning recruiting plan.
Yeah, knowledge is power. So, I mean, the more you know, the more you can make an educated decision for your child. And really, ultimately, at the end of the day, that is, I think, everyone's goal. Whether the elusive dream of the NHL or the PWHL is there, just being able to make an informed decision is, I think, all of our goals. So, having that information is powerful.
And there's nothing wrong with having lofty goals, right? We want
No.
our kids to reach for the stars.
Yeah, I mean, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Yeah. It's my favorite.
Who is the seminar designed for? Is it only for top tier players or for anyone interested in playing at the next level?
Well, I'd say players looking to play at the next level and parents of young athletes who haven't really started the process yet, but they don't really want to go into things blindly and make some of the most common mistakes. I mean, let's face it, there are scholarships out there, financial aid packages. There's a lot of money out there that could be saved just by knowing what to look for and what to avoid. As for elite athletes, absolutely, of course, it's something for everyone. I truly do believe that everyone would come away with something that would make them say, "Hey, it was worth it. It was worth listening to and watching for 90 minutes." What differentiates that course from similar offerings is that it's written by someone who's been in coaching and scouting. That perspective is a little different than someone who might be a hockey advisor or an ex NCAA player. I mean, not to say that there's anything wrong with their advice too, and I'm not saying they don't know hockey recruiting. They probably do. But what I want to know is from a scout, what a scout watches and how they tell me I'm going to get to the next level.
Yeah, it's your perspective as a scout with your experience. So I think that's an asset for sure.
It's just a little different. I mean, hey, you can never have too much information, right?
Yeah, exactly. What are the biggest takeaways families will leave your seminar with?
Well, understanding the different levels of hockey, the recruiting process, how commitments work, a bunch of tips and tricks we threw in there. It should be a full 90 minutes and yours to keep so you can refer back as many times as you want. Now, I'm not a hockey advisor, and some advisors can be good value to a family that can afford it and don't have the time to do a lot of the legwork themselves. But let's face it, hockey's expensive, and if you're willing to watch the course and do a lot of the work yourself, you can save yourself a ton of money. And there's nothing magical about recruitment. It's like any skill. It's a little scary getting started, but once you learn a bit, it begins to flow, and you'll eventually say, "Hey, I can do this."
Yeah, absolutely. You dig in and kind of learn stuff on your own. It's a bit rewarding too to know that you've asked the questions and you're learning the stuff, and I don't know, you feel a bit more invested in knowing you helped your child and pick the right path rather than just kind of blindly following too. Which blindly following is great. I do it all the time. But
I think it's good too, though, to show your athlete that it's good to prepare for it and go in with knowledge and go in knowing what to expect. And
yeah, it's good
research. You only have really maybe 2 seasons. 3 if you're absolutely ultra elite. But you only have a couple of seasons and whatnot to get this right. And if you your kid ends up in the wrong school and they end up having to transfer out, or they don't have a great experience, or same with billeting on an academy or on a junior team or whatever. There's not enough years being a kid to have some of them that just are frustrating and not fun.
How will your seminar help players avoid the common traps that you see year after year?
Well, I hope that it would be time and money. I mean, we all need more of it. The economy's pretty tough right now. The landscape is constantly changing for athletes. And this year, the NIL came in at the NCAA level, which is the name, image, and likeness. And that means some elite athletes could make big bucks playing college sports. But, and we're just starting to see this. I think the first one kind of came to light in the media not that long ago. But, you kind of wonder, has anyone considered that there's now the have and have not theory where, parity might suffer. Some big schools might be able to land all the best athletes and whatnot, and then we'll have, dynasties that last forever and ever. Or where kids might actually hold out for deals. I mean, that sounds crazy, but it's happening in football right now. And yeah, times are changing. This course asks you a lot of questions about your own scenario and how you can benefit from what might be available to you. And it can save you from some financial pitfalls and time wasted and poor ROI on some of those expenditures. most importantly, it's your blueprint to have a winning recruiting strategy.
That's great. If you could give one piece of advice to a family just starting this journey, what would it be?
Probably just like we talked about, throughout most of this discussion, and that's learn everything you can. I mean, my course is a great start. It gives you guidance to go further and where to look. But sports is a family affair, right? I mean, we some of the best times we have with our kids is, in the car on the way to that tournament or on the way to a far away game, and that sometimes it might be the only time that we get their undivided attention. So it can be frustrating or it can be exciting. It's all in how you approach it, and if a family really invests in the kid and everybody ends up being happy with the result, that's the end goal, right?
For sure. What new recruiting trends or changes should families be paying attention to in 2025 and beyond?
Well, I mean, what's happening, and certainly we're seeing it at the college level, probably more so at NCAA D3 than anything. Although, of course, the ACHA is frankly the fastest growing college league. I think there's over 460 teams now in the ACHA, and it's growing by leaps and bounds. You hear more about the NCAA teams, but there's so many more teams. There's so many more showcases. There's so many more camps put on every year that it becomes harder and harder to get bang for your buck as a coach or a scout. Like it used to be that we'd go to 6 of the main showcases and all the players that we'd want to see would be at least at 1 or 2 of them. Now you go to a showcase tournament and, when you get the teams and rosters, you're only seeing a few of the kids that you want to watch. And you have to decide, I only have so much of a recruiting budget. Is it worth me making that trip just to go and see only, 2 or 3 kids that have reached out to us? So, what that means is that video scouting is becoming, more and more popular. It's on the rise, and it saves scouts and coaches time and money. I mean, there's a few main platforms out there, and if you're looking to get recruited, you better be making sure that you're sending some up-to-date video constantly and having a recruiting plan, keeping up to date on the schools that have teams coming and going. There's always a few NCAA D3 programs that'll give up their team, but new ones at other schools will start up. The big news lately is that U of Michigan appears to be headed at a D1 women's program, and that would be huge. The Detroit area is a hockey hotbed, and most girls have always had to leave their state just to play high-level college hockey.
Yeah, that'd be crazy. Has the NIL, name, image, likeness, impacted women's hockey recruiting yet? And if so, how?
Well, I don't think it has. Certainly not, at least as much on the men's side. I mean, as we all know, on the women's side, the crowds for most teams will be less than on the men's side. A few big D1s not included in that. There are some teams that draw really well, and then merchandise sales are usually kind of in lockstep with that discrepancy. But just like we talked about Seattle and Vancouver getting on the radar, as the PWHL grows and women's college hockey continues to grow, that might change. I sure hope it does. I mean, if there's one thing that never stops, it's change in the hockey world.
For parents who didn't grow up in the hockey world, what's one thing they absolutely need to know now?
Well, I would say don't expect them to find you. We already talked about that. And certainly don't be expert on your kids' team because they almost went to the show and therefore they, right? You can do better.
There's one everywhere.
There's one on every team, as I say.
Yeah. Oh, I almost went to the show.
Yeah.
Cool.
Honestly, sometimes they mean well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just like anything else, there is no one cookie cutter.
Yeah.
To recruiting in that manner, like what works for one person, it may not work for the next. So, to get one person's opinion who's only been through it one time.
30 years ago.
Yeah.
And the landscape changes so much, like we said, like constantly. So it is, yeah. After 30 years in hockey, what keeps you passionate about scouting and helping young athletes?
Well, I would have to say people. I mean, you got to love people, and it should make your heart full when you see a kid commit to the school or the team that they wanted.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't even have to be for the team that I'm with. I mean, hey, you end up developing relationships with some of these kids, and ultimately they decide, you know what? XYZ was, a better fit for me. And I personally try to make a point to even send them a congratulatory email because, if that's the right thing and mine wasn't the right thing, then good for you. Make the right decision that's for you. Not because you're feeling bad that, he's a really nice guy and I don't want to let him down. No, especially when it comes to college, university hockey, that you're talking 4 or 5 years of your life, and these are supposed to be the best years of your life, right? So it's just so important to make the right decision, and I just love it. I love seeing when these kids commit and everything, and especially if I got to know them through the process, and that I'm just so happy for them regardless of where they go.
Yeah, you feel invested in stuff too, right? Like, I mean, I know watching just kids grow up on teams around us when they're like on a team or make a certain team, I get excited for them. So I can only imagine it's similar, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Is there a memorable recruiting story or a full circle moment that stands out for you?
Yeah, actually, that's an easy one, but strap in because we might be here for a minute. So there was a small tournament going on in Cornwall, Ontario, and I decided last minute I'd go and watch because there was a few teams that we hadn't seen yet, and we were pretty much done attending in-person showcases and whatnot for the year, and we were still on the hunt for a top 6 forward. So I watched one game and there's this kid and she can't weigh 100 pounds soaking wet, but the hands on her, she was just fantastic, right? So there wasn't much else to see that day. And so I decided that although she was probably going to be going to someone else's school, she was already committed. She certainly must have had interest in schools with skills like that. And she hadn't reached out to us, but I figured, what the heck, I'll go and see what's up. So I asked her coach to speak to her. And turns out she's from the Ukraine and she's an Olympic boxer as well. Yeah. So she speaks decent English, not great, but certainly she can get by. And I noticed that there's another coach waiting to talk to her as well. And so I'm like, well, this isn't going to go well for me. We'll just have a quick conversation. And so I give her my pitch. I leave her with my card. And lo and behold, a few days later, we actually get a recruiting questionnaire from her. So like a kid on Christmas Eve, I call up our head coach and I'm just absolutely giddy and basically tell him, get her down there, fly her down, all expenses paid, sign her ASAP if she's interested. And he trusts my judgment pretty good. I haven't steered him wrong too many times. So we fast track her recruiting questionnaire and her recruiting process, and she commits. And then over her time at Liberty, she becomes one of the leading scorers on the team for multiple seasons. And she's just so clutch, right? Like, I mean, we won a couple national championships and she was a big, big part of them. So I go to watch the team in her junior year. And she runs up to me and gives me a big hug and tells me how she's so happy that she chose our school. And she's graduated now. And we never really lost touch. She played a year in Minnesota on their pro team. And now she's actually a coach out your way at a Purcell Hockey Academy. And she brings her team down to our school each year for a team campus visit and a couple of preseason exhibition games. Yeah, it's just so cool to see her behind the bench now. She's a great kid, and it's just been really neat to see how hockey has been so instrumental in her career.
Favorite arena you've ever scouted in?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of them. There's different things about every one of them. I'd probably say, and I don't even know if you would have heard of this one before, but it's called Bob's Big Boy Arena in Fraser. And the whole reason why I say that is because it's perfectly located and whatnot, close to all the good hotels. There's tons of parking. Like when you're changing rinks and whatnot, you're not driving around looking for a parking spot forever. And the lobby's huge. I think there's like probably 20 video games or something in the lobby. But it's big, it's big enough that you can pull aside a kid and a parent for a quick chat or whatever. Viewing angles are pretty good, and I'm a big fan of wings for dinner. And there's a great Buffalo Wild Wings, and it's like almost right next door. So
I love that. Bob's Big Boy Arena in Michigan. I'm definitely going to have to visit there.
Yes, exactly.
What's the biggest recruiting green flag you notice in a player right away?
Probably I'd say positivity. Show me how much you love the game, even when things don't go your way. And probably another thing I would say off the cuff would be resilience. Your ability to bounce back. I have a rule, and I call it my 2-minute rule. You're allowed 2 minutes to get over something. If I'm watching a certain prospect and something goes very wrong or even very right, I'll give you 2 minutes to either shake it off or get back to even keel, because the elites can wash it away and get on with their game. And not everybody can, right? So resilience is everything. The kid who tries their best, but something goes wrong and they're banging their stick on the boards and whatnot, and they just can't shake it and can't get over it, they're going to have some challenges.
Most underrated skill young players should work on more.
I'd say probably puck battles. It's the kid that wins the puck battles on the boards that are usually the ones who love to have the puck on their stick. We want to see kids who want that puck on their stick, not someone who kind of is playing what we would call hot potato and, it's on their stick, off their stick. Show me you want to have that puck on your stick and I'll be interested.
So pregame, must-have snacks or rituals when you're out scouting all day. What would you say is yours?
That's probably the easiest question of all, and it's coffee. Lots and lots of coffee.
I need coffee all day, all the time.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I mean, when you're at a showcase, and for a lot of parents, I'm going to say this, and then it's going to kind of click. And so, your kid has a game in the morning, and you go there and you see a certain school or junior team coach or whatever that's there, and then you go on with your day, and then you have a night game, and you go back there, and oh my gosh, that same coach or scouts here. Maybe they're watching us. They're here for the game again. No, we've just never left. So literally, my day when I'm at a showcase starts at 5 a.m. and usually finishes around midnight. And it's because when you're getting up at 5, you're double checking that final schedule, or you're going over certain things on the recruits that you have to see, or making some pre-notes. And when I say finishing around midnight, it's because a lot of the time the games won't finish until after 10 o'clock. Then you get back to the hotel, maybe you get a little something to eat, and then you're probably sending emails to a couple of these kids.
What's one word you'd use to describe the best recruits you've ever worked with?
Well, best recruits I've ever worked with, I'd say honesty. We talked about that earlier. Whether you want to come to our school or play for a team that I'm scouting for, just be honest with me. There's certain signs that'll trigger that a kid isn't being truthful about their intentions, and that's really too bad, because there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, you know what, because of such and such a reason, decided to go in another direction or whatever. That's fine, but just be honest about it. Don't string us along, because we don't want to be strung along, and we certainly don't want to do the same to you either. It's hard because, some of these kids, you're talking about sometimes, a 16, 17-year-old girl talking to a 55-year-old man. And that can be a daunting task for a young lady in that. And, hey, we get that, right? I try to be as honest and not do anything that's, completely off the cuff and whatnot that they wouldn't expect. So they're, when we're going to be there to see them at a particular tournament and whatnot. And I'll usually say, hey, you know what? Watched your game this morning. Really love to have a chat with you after your game tonight, if you're okay. And if mom or dad want to sit in with us at the same time, absolutely. Bring them along. No problem. We want to make everyone feel comfortable, as well as, moving towards the end goal.
Where can families find more information about your recruiting course?
Well, we've got our own website, and it's at aaahockeyrecruiting.com, and it's a great website. My brother-in-law, who owns a company called Burke Street Media, he made the website and whatnot, and we've got secure payment options in there for that. We've also got our own email, and it's all been coming together over a couple months and a couple 100 hours of hard work. Hopefully it's going to work out and be a great tool for a lot of people.
Thank you, Steve, so much for joining us this week. I think we learned a lot already, and I know I'm super excited to try and take your course and learn more. I'm pretty sure Brittany is too.
Yes, we learned a lot today. Thanks for taking the time to talk with us today, and I look forward to learning more about your course.
That's great. Appreciate that. Awesome. Oh, thanks for having me, and it's been a pleasure. And for all the families out there, hey, if you happen to see me at the rink, don't be shy. Come and say hi.
Until next week, friends, stay loud, stay proud, and stay awesome. Thanks for tuning in today, and we appreciate you listening. Catch us next week for another mix of hockey tales, tricks, and/or tips.